In the world of high stakes and sharp suits, a simple janitor held the key to a revelation that would shake the corporate tower to its core. The sun peeked through the blinds of the opulent office as Mr. James, the CEO of a renowned corporation, stood gazing out at the bustling city below. His sharp suit and polished shoes reflected his status and power. Known for his demanding nature and unyielding standards, Mr. James prided himself on maintaining order and respect within his company. At the other end of the office, the janitor, Mr. Ahmad, quietly went about his work. His demeanor was calm, his movements precise, and his eyes held a wisdom that seemed out of place for someone in his position. Mr. James barely acknowledged Mr. Ahmad's presence, seeing him as nothing more than a cog in the machine. One morning, Mr. James entered the office to find a small mess on the floor. His face reddened with irritation. "Mr. Ahmad," he barked, his voice echoing through the office. "Is this how you do your job? Clean this up immediately." Mr. Ahmad looked up from his task, his expression serene. "Yes, sir," he replied softly, his hands moving deftly to address the mess. "Show some respect," Mr. James continued, his tone laced with disdain. "Do you have any idea who I am?" Mr. Ahmad paused for a moment, a small smile playing at the corners of his lips. "Yes, sir," he said, meeting Mr. James's gaze. "I know exactly who you are." Mr. James huffed and turned away, dismissing the janitor with a wave of his hand. He had more important matters to attend to than dealing with a lowly janitor. Days turned into weeks, and Mr. Ahmad continued his work with the same quiet dignity. The staff noticed him, but like Mr. James, they never truly saw him. To them, he was just the janitor, always there, but never really present in their minds. One evening, after a particularly long and stressful day, Mr. James was in his office, poring over financial reports. His brow furrowed and frustration etched on his face. As the clock ticked past midnight, Mr. Ahmad entered to clean up, as he always did. Mr. James sighed heavily and rubbed his temples. "Mr. Ahmad," he called out, not looking up from his papers. "Could you get me a cup of coffee, please?" "Strong." Mr. Ahmad quietly complied, returning with a steaming cup of coffee. As he handed it to Mr. James, he noticed the exhaustion and worry in the CEO's eyes. "Long day, sir?" he asked gently. "Long month," Mr. James muttered, taking a sip of the coffee. To his surprise, it was perfect. "Thank you, Mr. Ahmad. This is just what I needed." Mr. Ahmad nodded, a knowing smile on his lips. "Sometimes, sir, the simplest things can make the biggest difference." Mr. James looked at the janitor, truly seeing him for the first time. There was something about Mr. Ahmad's presence that was calming, almost reassuring. "How long have you been working here, Mr. Ahmad?" he asked, curiosity piqued. "A long time, sir," Mr. Ahmad replied, his eyes reflecting a depth of experience. "Long enough to see many changes." Mr. James nodded slowly, his mind wandering as he watched the janitor move with deliberate care. For the first time, he wondered who this man really was. What stories lay behind those wise eyes? Weeks continued to pass, and Mr. Ahmad's presence in the office became more than just a routine. He would often exchange a few words with Mr. James during his late-night cleaning sessions, offering wisdom and calmness that Mr. James found unexpectedly comforting. One particularly difficult day, Mr. James found himself facing a daunting financial crisis within the company. His team was at a loss, and every solution seemed to lead to another dead end. As the evening wore on, Mr. James stayed late in his office, staring at the numbers that refused to add up. Mr. Ahmad entered, as always, with his cleaning supplies. Noticing the deep worry on Mr. James's face, he approached quietly. "Is everything all right, sir?" he asked with genuine concern. Mr. James sighed heavily. "No, Mr. Ahmad, it's not. We're facing a major financial issue, and I can't seem to find a way out." Mr. Ahmad nodded thoughtfully, his eyes scanning the documents on the desk. "Sometimes, it's not about finding the right numbers, but the right perspective," he said gently. "Would you like some help?" Mr. James looked at the janitor in surprise. "Help? From you?" Mr. Ahmad smiled warmly. You might be surprised what a different set of eyes can see. With nothing to lose, Mr. James handed over some of the documents. Mr. Ahmad studied them carefully, his expression serious. After a few moments, he pointed to a section of the financial report. Here, sir. There's a discrepancy in the projected revenue. It's based on outdated market trends. If you adjust it to the current figures, you'll see a different picture. Mr. James leaned over, scrutinizing the area Mr. Ahmad had indicated. To his astonishment, the janitor was right. The numbers aligned in a way that offered a potential solution. How did you see that? He asked, bewildered. Mr. Ahmad simply shrugged. Experience, sir. Sometimes it's the people you least expect who can offer the most valuable insights. Mr. James couldn't believe what had just happened. A janitor had pinpointed the critical issue that his entire team had missed. He looked at Mr. Ahmad with newfound respect and curiosity. Who are you, really? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Ahmad met his gaze, the same calm demeanor never wavering. Just someone who understands that everyone, no matter their position, has something valuable to contribute, he said simply. Over the next few days, Mr. James couldn't shake the mystery surrounding Mr. Ahmad. One afternoon, he decided to dig deeper. After some research, he discovered something astonishing. Mr. Ahmad was once a celebrated financial analyst, known for his strategic insights and innovative solutions. He had mysteriously disappeared from the corporate world years ago. Intrigued and puzzled, Mr. James decided to confront Mr. Ahmad. That evening, as the janitor went about his usual routine, Mr. James approached him. Mr. Ahmad, I found out about your past. You were a financial analyst, weren't you? Why did you leave that life behind to become a janitor? Mr. Ahmad's eyes twinkled with a mix of amusement and nostalgia. Yes, sir, I was. I chose this path because I wanted a simpler life, away from the constant stress and pressure. But it doesn't mean I stopped caring or lost my skills. I just chose to apply them differently. Mr. James was taken aback by the humility and wisdom in Mr. Ahmad's words. Would you consider coming back to the corporate world? We could use someone with your experience and insight. Mr. Ahmad smiled gently. I'm content where I am, sir. But if you ever need advice or a fresh perspective, I'll always be here.